This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
This morning we are talking about lecture comprehension. How well do we actually understand things that we hear, and how can we improve that understanding?
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Good morning. It is Saturday, the 14th of December, 2024, and you are here listening to the Saturday Breakfast Show with me, Darren Lester. I am so happy to be having breakfast with you this morning, just like we do every single week. And I am forever grateful to those of you who come back every single week to sit and have breakfast with me. How has your week been? Mine has been busy. We know that this is the busiest time of year to be in a school. I think every time of year is the busiest time of year to be in a school, to be fair. But we know that this time of year is particularly busy because no matter what phase you teach, you have got young people getting very, very excited about the celebrations that are to come. You've got a whole lot of celebrations happening in your setting. You know, there are carol concerts, there are nativities, there are plays, there are dinners, there are nights out. There's all sorts of things going on, which makes this time of year really exciting, but also very tiring, very difficult to manage. You know, you always feel like I just have to make it to the end of the week, and then the next week comes and it's I just have to make it to the end of the week. So I hope that you are making it. To those of you who have broken up already, as I know quite a few schools have, including the school in which I've been doing some supply recently, congratulations. I hope that you are in fact not listening to me live, that you are listening to me on playback so that you can have a well-deserved lie-in. But if you are still going, if you're going until Friday, good luck, keep going, and just know that the break is in sight. The break is there on the horizon. All that to say, my week was busy. When I started my online teaching and I kind of left the physical classroom back in the summer, I had this vision of autumn 2 being really lovely and really cozy and really laid back and kind of just embracing the slower pace of life that feels like it should be natural at this time of year. But that is not what has happened. In fact, this week has probably been the busiest one for me of the autumn term so far, and I was only actually in a physical school for one day. So I dread to think how it's been for those of you that teach in a physical school for the whole rest of the year. But yeah, it has been quite a busy one. I have finished off reading a book that I had to read, and I know what you're thinking. Oh, poor Darren, he's so busy because he read a book. I know. But I did do that. I've got a review coming out for a classics journal well, actually, I don't know when the review will be out, but the review itself is due at the end of January. So I finished reading the book for that. I haven't written the review yet, but I will get round to that. Then I had the TTR Journal Club, TTR MFL Journal Club, I should say, my first meeting with the Journal Club members, and it was so good. It was actually so good. We've got a lot of signups. We've got 60 something signups at this point. I kind of knew that this week would be a smaller, more intimate gathering because, of course, I did decide that we would have our first meeting in December when everybody is tired, when everybody just wants to get home from school, curl up on the sofa, and watch a rubbish film with some chocolates. But still, we had 10 people, 10 dedicated people come to join us, and we had such a good discussion on differentiation, on kind of what we do in the classroom, and more importantly, what we don't do in the classroom. And I think for me, that was the biggest takeaway of Journal Club for this half term, is that actually nobody really feels like they're getting differentiation right. I think if we're honest, we would say that we get it wrong more than we get it right most of the time, which is not because we're not trying, and it's not because we don't know in theory what we're supposed to do. It's because the theory doesn't work anymore. I think that was the conclusion that I came to. Obviously, I don't want to spill all the Journal Club secrets here on the show, because otherwise people wouldn't need to come to Journal Club. But I do, one of the things that for me really leapt out of the reading that we did for this meeting was the fact that in MFL, and this is specifically about MFL, the point of Journal Club is that it is targeted to your specific subject or your specific phase. So obviously the club that I run here at TTR is for MFL teachers. We're focused on MFL. And there has been no research done into differentiation in MFL since the early 2000s. Most of the research comes from the mid to late 90s. Now, let's be honest, and I said this in the meeting, how many times have exams changed since 2000? Let's say if we take 2000 as our starting point, how many times have exams changed since 2000? How has the profile of languages in the UK changed since the year 2000? New languages have been added to the curriculum, languages have been dropped from the curriculum. The primary language initiative has come in and then been phased out and then come back in. It's been a bit like a yo-yo. So much has changed in the 20 odd years since any last chunky research was done into differentiation. It's honestly no wonder that we're not really getting it right. So that was a really good discussion that we had. That was really positive. I enjoyed that very much. Thursday, I was in school. Like I said, I was in a physical school on Thursday doing some supply. That was a really nice day though, because the school that I was in had their carol service in the afternoon. So I stayed to that. And I said to the deputy head afterwards when I was just chatting that it made me realize how much I do actually miss being in a physical school at this time of year. It is really festive, and I understand that is a little bit of I wouldn't say Stockholm syndrome, but that's not really what I mean. When you've been in a physical school pretty much every year since you were 4 years old, at Christmas time, the schooly bits of Christmas are what make it. And so, the carol concert, making snowflakes. I used to make paper chains where the kids would write sentences on them. There is a specific film that I've shown in my year 9 French classes every single year for the past 12 years that is not actually a Christmas film, but in my head it is a Christmas film. And I'm kind of antsy because I haven't watched that yet. There are all of these little rituals, all of these little things that happen that just become part of your Christmas celebration. And I think having now made that transition into the online classroom space where it is slightly different, and where maybe for next year I do need to think about what I'm going to do to still kind of bring the Christmas or bring the Saturnalia, I guess, since I'm head of Latin, so I probably should be focused on Saturnalia in my lessons, kind of bring that into the online space, because it was something that I didn't realize I would miss until I was sitting there in the carol concert and I thought, okay, yeah, this is Christmas now. And so I would actually be interested, those, because I know that we do have some listeners who are very supportive here every single week, despite not being teachers, involved with children in various ways. We have social workers listening, we have writers listening, we have therapists listening. So for those of you who are not particularly involved in schools, I would be interested to know how you made that adjustment from kind of Christmas, schools being all about Christmas at this time of year, to suddenly kind of having to do it yourself. Because that was something that I am struggling with at the moment, that I did not realize I would be struggling with, which is quite interesting. So that was Thursday. That was a really nice day. And then yesterday I just took the day off because, and I don't know why I was so tired, but I just was. And it sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Because, like I've already said, I'm tired because I have taught my lessons as normal. I've done one day in a physical school. I've read a book, and I've hosted a meeting. But I am, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's nothing wrong with being tired at this time of year. And I feel like we kind of just need to embrace that and go, do you know what? This is just how it is. I am doing my best. Good morning. I have had a text from Yusro. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. My apologies if I haven't. Texting from Nigeria. So lovely to have you here with us today, with us this morning. One of the things that I love about being here with you on a Saturday morning is that we do get listeners from all over the world. And obviously, as a languages teacher, I am particularly interested in culture and how the world works. And so I'm really grateful that we can have listeners everywhere to share their experiences, and because we can all just make our education and our lives that little bit better. If you would like Yusro to text in, you can. If you are listening live this morning via the Podbean app, you can just text straight in there and I will read your text out on air. We can engage that way. If you are listening to me live elsewhere, or listening on playback, and it is not 12 minutes past 9 on Saturday the 14th of December for you, you can tweet me or blue sky me. I am at Mr. D Lester on both. So please do engage with our topic today, because I am always really interested to hear from you.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Parentkind are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By fostering strong school-parent partnerships, we can boost student attendance, improve behaviour and enhance academic performance. When parents actively participate, students thrive. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents.
Are your teachers juggling multiple technology platforms and struggling to keep everything organised? Then Toddle might be the answer. Built by a team of ex-educators, Toddle offers an all-in-one solution for teachers that streamlines everything, from curriculum planning and assessments to communication and report cards. And the best part? Toddle comes inbuilt with an AI assistant that helps teachers save time and improve their practices. 85% of schools replaced 3 or more platforms when they brought in Toddle. Teachers using Toddle say that the platform helps them save up to 10 hours a week. That means more time for what really matters, supporting students and driving academic success. See how Toddle can support your school. Visit toddleapp.com.
Hey education changemakers, ready for something special? It's Bet Show's 40th anniversary and we're throwing a free celebration just for you. Join us at London Excel from January 22nd to 24th to connect, learn and be inspired. Picture this, 300 plus speakers who truly get it, 600 cutting-edge edtech companies and all the fresh ideas you need to make 2025 your best year yet. So why wait? Head to uk.betshow.com, grab your free ticket and come celebrate with your peers. Because this is for you. See you at Bet.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
FE Week reports that MPs have given Sir Ian Buckham the nod to continue as the chief regulator for Ofqual. Parliament's Education Committee today agreed that Sir Ian, the government's preferred candidate, was appointable to the post. The committee said it hopes he fulfills his commitment to serve a full term in office and restore much-needed stability to Ofqual. Sir Ian has been serving as interim chief regulator, but the approval means he could do the role permanently. Sir Ian told the committee that his roles in schools had provided him with a good understanding of the educational landscape and a deep appreciation of the value of qualifications. The previous experience includes leading a multi-academy trust and acting as chair of Oak National Academy. The BBC reports that striking teachers have held a rally outside the Leeds constituency office of Chancellor Rachel Reeves to demonstrate about pay. The group were joined by NEU General Secretary Daniel Kebede, following a government announcement in July that teachers would receive a 5.5% pay rise this year. The union has objected, as sixth form colleges without academy status have not been guaranteed funding to implement the award. The picket line in Bramley was held during the fourth one-day strike by staff at 32 colleges in England. Mr. Kebede said around 2,000 of the union's members were taking part in the latest walkouts. A Department for Education spokesperson said the government recognised the vital role played by sixth form colleges, but that they were responsible for setting appropriate pay for their workforce and managing their own industrial relations. The spokesperson also added that the autumn budget had provided an additional £300 million of revenue funding for further education, and it would set out in due course how it would be distributed. The Scotsman covers the story of the possible unravelling of a deal to replace 621 axed teachers, as several major local authorities declined to offer assurances over teacher numbers next year. In a joint statement, it was revealed that local government and the Scottish Government were committed to working together to restore teacher numbers to 2023 levels, and Education Secretary Jenny Gilruth said she would release £14.5 million to councils this year and increase it to £186.5 million next year to help deliver the pledge. However, some local authorities have failed to commit to the pledge to return to 2023 levels. Glasgow City Council cut 120 full-time equivalent teachers last year, but a spokesperson would only say, "We acknowledge that Glasgow's portion of last year's funding from the government has now been released. We continue to engage regarding next year's census figures." A spokesperson for Aberdeenshire Council also said, "Recruitment remains a significant challenge." In South Lanarkshire, the Director of Finance and Corporate Resources said, "The reduction in numbers is a result of the return to core numbers following short-term increases as part of the response to the pandemic." The Scottish National Party pledged in 2021 that it would recruit an additional 3,500 teachers. But since then, the number of full-time equivalent staff has fallen by 873. Full details of the numbers and further comment can be found in the Scotsman online. Finally, the Times of India reports that amid tightening visa policies in traditional destinations like the US, UK, Canada and Australia, Indian students are turning to European countries like Germany, France and Ireland for higher education. Sources report a 40% decline in interest in the conventional destinations, citing easier visa processes, more affordable education, and lower living costs as key reasons for the shift. Germany has become a top choice due to a streamlined visa process and 18-month post-graduation job-seeking visas. Most students are going for courses like engineering, computer science and management, whilst in France popular courses include arts, history and fashion, with a 2-year post-study work visa extended to 5 years for master's degree holders. In Ireland, graduates can also stay for 2 years post-study. Further details on this story can be found in the Times of India online. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Thank you, Joe. Some really interesting stories there, as always. It amazes me how much goes on in the world of education each and every week that Joe is able to produce a brand new show with no repetition for us every single week. It really is fascinating, I think. And, we acknowledge that I'm that geeky person who is hosting a termly meeting so that we can sit and talk about the research in education. So, we acknowledge that. But I do think it's interesting to keep up with what happens in education around the world. Like I said, just before the news, because it is interconnected. We are, as people, interconnected, especially more now than ever. And I sometimes think we forget that. It's very easy to think of education as being in isolation because systems are so different from each other. And we do try and learn from other systems. Here in the UK, we always look at the Nordic models and we think about how great they are, and yet never seem to do anything to try to follow them. But I think, because we all have that same goal of just making our subject or our knowledge or whatever it might be accessible to young people, I think it is really good for us to look at not just what is happening in our own insular system, but at what is happening everywhere so that we can really make it better. Because, I do think that ultimately that is what we are all trying to do here, is to make things better. Or maybe I'm just being a bit optimistic now that we've come to the end of the year. We're going to jump straight in today and talk about the meat of the show, which is how we improve lecture comprehension. So let's just start off by acknowledging the fact that we all know that VAC is a load of nonsense. For whatever reason, it still dominates educational discourse. For some reason, children still seem to know about visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learning, but we know that it was science that was debunked pretty much as soon as it was published. Yet, there is a grain of truth in it. Not that certain people learn best through certain styles, but that there are these different ways of processing information, different ways to take the information in, and some of them are often more effective than others. I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago when I was putting up my new bookshelves, which I am still so surprised haven't fallen down and crushed me in my sleep yet, because I am not the best handyman in the world. But I got them, and they came from a very famous store which supplies to all over the world, and so sends instructions with pictures and no words, because that's cheaper, because it means that they can just send the exact same instructional leaflet out no matter where in the world these bookshelves are purchased. Now, my issue is I don't process pictorial information very, very well. I know that about myself. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. I need words. It should come as no surprise to anybody that I grew up to be a linguist, quite honestly. But I do. I need words. I need writing. And so I struggled. In fact, and I'm embarrassed by this, so I can't believe I'm admitting it live on air, but I did in fact build them upside down, because I just didn't understand these pictures. So, I know from my own experience that there are different ways that people prefer to take in information, that people find it easier to take in information. But the fact that these bookshelves are standing, the fact that they haven't fallen and crushed me in my sleep, the fact that they haven't torn down the wall that I've attached them to, does mean that even though I was just working on these pictures that I found difficult, I could still do it. I did still learn how to put these bookshelves together through using the pictures. And so I feel like, we should acknowledge the fact that there are different ways to convey information. But that all are valid and all are processable. Tim has texted in a very good morning to you. Tim is, of course, a long-term friend of the show. Has been here since the beginning, because he was in fact my very first guest, and I'm so glad that he has stuck with us. He has said, I don't want your shelves to fall down, but I am quite excited for a potential Flat Stanley reboot. Do you know what? I could get on board with that. We know that I like to travel. If I could just be like folded up, popped into an envelope, and sent off to Japan for the price of an airmail stamp, it's probably just a little bit cheaper than actually getting a plane ticket to fly there, but that will work for me. Oh, I had forgotten all about Flat Stanley. That's something that I might have to look up from the library. But yeah, so there are all of these different ways that we can take in information, and one of the least effective ways, generally, according to the research that has been done, is listening, which is actually quite hilarious when you think of how often we tell children that they need to listen to us when we are speaking. Which, of course, could be one of the reasons that listening is one of the weakest ways to take information in. Now, again, just kind of drawing on my own experience, I think about when I listen to audiobooks. I'm not a big fan of audiobooks, really. I want to be. I really do want to be, because, quite frankly, if I could consume audiobooks, I would read so much more. I'm going to tell you now, we're going to talk about goals and resolutions in the new year, because that's something that I really like to do. So when we come back in January, we'll talk about that. But I'm just going to tell you now, I have failed to hit my goal of hitting 100 books this year. I think I'm on 72, and there is no way that I'm going to read 28 books before the year is out. So I've failed that one. But I know that if I were better able to consume audiobooks, I would smash that no problem. The problem for me with audiobooks is that I don't retain the information as I'm listening to it. I just don't retain it. My mind wanders. I get distracted. Kind of, 30 minutes goes by in the audio file and I've got no idea what I've just listened to. So I would like to be an audiobook person, and I do keep trying. Every time the different audiobook platforms email me to tell me that I've got a month's free trial, I take it and I listen to some books. But what I tend to do is go, oh yeah, okay, I think I enjoyed that, so I'm going to now go and get the physical book out of the library. Or I think to myself, no, I didn't really enjoy that experience. I don't think I need to read it. So I kind of use audiobooks like trailers, I suppose, to see whether I need to go ahead and read the physical book. And I don't know why that is, because when I was little, I had, and I don't know if anybody else remembers these, we're going to take a nostalgia trip for a moment, but there used to be these things that you can get, and I don't know whether it was like a Partworks or whether it was just something you nipped into Toys R Us and picked up. But it was like a plastic clam case, and inside was a book and a tape. So it was a way of getting books on tapes, but they were really specific. And the reason in my head they were really specific is because they were in this kind of transparent plastic clam case that could then sit in your bookcase. And I remember having all sorts of them. I had Pinocchio and Aesop's Fables, and there were loads of them. Tim has texted him that maybe I'm thinking of The Storyteller. I honestly don't know. All I can picture, all I can see in my head is this transparent clam case, and the front of the clam case had a little recess where the tape would fit. And then the covers of the books were white, and then it was like the picture of the cover of the regular book on it with the title. That's literally the only thing that I can process. But I had loads of them, and I really enjoyed them. And I think what I enjoyed was the process of listening to the story being read to me while I was reading it. I think I liked that dual, the multimodal aspect of it. I remember having chickenpox when I was in year 2. And my mum wanted to make sure that I didn't kind of fall behind on anything. So I spent the whole week that I was at home with chickenpox listening to these books. And at some point I listened to a version of Joseph and his coat that was also a book on tape, because that's the one that really stands out to me. I also used to get werebears, if anybody remembers those from back in the day. I think they were supposed to be Care Bears for boys, but they were these teddy bears, and they looked just like normal teddy bears, but you could turn their face inside out and you could turn their hands inside out, and they became scary. So the face got, the inside out face had fangs and its eyes were red, and then the hands became claws. But they all came with a book on tape that you could listen to, and I loved those. So I don't know at what point I kind of stopped being able to comprehend audiobooks, books on tape. But I did. At some point I just stopped being able to take in that information. And I don't know if something happens as we get older that means that our, as our brain chemistry changes, we struggle to retain that information, or what, but something happens, or at least something happens to me. And for me now, I think that listening is the hardest way for me to retain information. If I had a choice when building these bookshelves between hearing somebody read the instructions out to me and just having the pictures with no words, I would plump for the pictures with no words, because I think I would find it even harder to retain just hearing the instructions. So it was a bit of a relief to me. I'm going to be very honest. As somebody who likes reading, I follow lots of reading influencers, and they all talk about how many audiobooks they consume, and I feel really kind of inadequate and guilty. It was a relief to me when I found this research that suggested that, in fact, just listening to information is generally the least effective way of taking it in. But of course, as with anything, it is possible to train that. It is possible to train that comprehension. And tying it in quite nicely with metacognition, which, as we know, is trendy at the moment and is something that I'm really interested in, that I really like. I read a study by Alison King. This is a 1991 study. So again, it's old research. There has been more updated research, and that's absolutely fine. This just happens to be the one that I read. And it was quite interesting to kind of think about what Alison had to say about how we can use metacognitive strategies to improve our lecture comprehension. So, important to define terms. When we talk about lecture comprehension, we mean audio comprehension. The French speaker in me likes the irony of this, because, as I've pointed out on the show before, the French word lecture, from which we get our word lecture, actually means reading. So I love the fact that it's undergone that shift in its change from French to English, where it now means listening. But it gives me a bit of hope, Alison's study, that we can use these metacognitive techniques to improve our lecture comprehension, our audio comprehension, whatever you want to call it, because maybe next year I will be able to surpass my goal of 100 books if I can train myself to actually take in and retain audiobooks in the way that I want to. So what Alison's study did was to look at self-questioning as a metacognitive strategy, and to see whether that enhanced the comprehension of lecture content. So she wanted to think of self-questioning as a method in which learners posed questions to themselves while they were listening to something in order to monitor their own understanding of it. And her theory was that self-questioning helps you to integrate the new information that you are being given with your prior knowledge, and it helps to identify gaps in comprehension so you know what you need to follow up on, and it can promote problem solving. So her theory is that self-questioning as a metacognitive strategy while listening to something is going to help you to fill in those gaps and to tie together old and new information, which of course is ultimately what all learning is about, isn't it? I've spoken before on the show about how I was trained as a social constructivist. So I was trained under the notion that that knowledge is created by talking to people, from comparing your experiences to somebody else's. We talked on the show last week when we were talking about the difference between learning and performance, about how learning actually means a change in thinking, whereas performance is what is then done on the paper. If you haven't listened to that show, please do go back and listen to it. I found doing the research on that really, really interesting. And it made me think a lot about my own practice and where I've conflated the two. So yeah, if you are looking for something to listen to over the Christmas break, then I very highly recommend that one, if I do say so myself. Not because it's me, but just because I got a lot out of the fact that, or out of doing the research for it. But yeah, there's this idea then that self-questioning is going to help you to figure out where your own gaps are, and will then tell you that you need to go and fill them. So let's be honest, that's not only useful in lecture comprehension, that's useful for everything. If you are able to identify a gap in your own knowledge by asking a question, asking yourself a question, and then going, oh, I don't know, I can't answer that, regardless of the input you've got, that's going to help. So I kind of feel like, although I've identified lecture comprehension, listening comprehension as my particular weak link, wherever your learners feel that they are weakest in terms of learning, self-questioning as a metacognitive strategy may well help. If you are in the process of learning, if you're doing a course at the moment, maybe you're doing an MPQ, maybe you're doing a master's, maybe you're on your doctoral journey as I am, then in your own lectures, in your own reading, in your own seminars, in your own writing, then self-questioning as a metacognitive strategy may help you to kind of understand your own material deeper. So hopefully this is something that you're going to find will apply not just to your own students, but to you as well. So Alison did this study which involved 56 ninth graders, so year 8 in, no, sorry, I've done that the wrong way, year 10 in the UK curriculum. And they were based in Southern California. And they were put into 4 groups. There was a group that participated in self-questioning and peer questioning. So as they were listening to something, as they were learning, they were asking themselves questions and they were asking each other questions. There was a second group that took part in self-questioning only. So all they did was ask themselves questions. There was a group that took part in a discussion group, and so they talked about the information that they had learned afterwards. And then there was a control group that just went through the lessons as normal. The children were given training on how to ask themselves questions. So they underwent 2 45-minute sessions on how to generate higher order questions. And there was an emphasis on using question stems as a way of ensuring consistency across the groups, which I think is a really good experimental design. And I think children quite often struggle to ask questions. We find that in MFL all the time. At A-level, certainly in the big 3, the students in the speaking exam, in fact, in the big 3 and Chinese, students in the speaking exam have to ask questions in order to be able to access the top marks. They need that to show fluency and to show interaction. And we actually have to physically train them in how to ask questions, not just the language of it, not just in Mandarin adding ma to the end of your sentence, not just in French teaching them to do the subject-verb inversion or put in est que in front of your sentence, but in actually thinking about what their question is going to do. When is a good time to ask a question? When is it appropriate in the turn taking to ask a question? What is it that they want to elicit? How can they use the question to move the conversation along? So children are not very good at asking questions. And I think sometimes, have you ever written in a report or said at parents' evening, oh, Tommy needs to ask for help when he needs it? Because I know that I have. But one thing that I thought about as I was reading this study is that maybe Tommy doesn't know how. Because asking questions is a skill. Asking for help is a separate skill. But asking questions is a skill. And unless you can actually know what you are asking and why you are asking it, it can be really difficult to do so. So these kids underwent this training, and they were using these question stems for consistency, but actually I think question stems are really good for facilitating the questioning process amongst children, for helping children to ask questions that go beyond the monosyllabic why that you get out of toddlers. The participants then practiced these strategies that they were trained in during 5 course lectures. So they were lectured to 5 times, and they were tested immediately after the lecture on the content of the lecture, and then they were tested again 10 days later. So we had some interval testing there, but without the teacher going back over the content of the lecture in the meantime. What Alison found was that the self-questioning strategies outperformed the discussion and the control groups. So the group that had self and peer questioning and the group that had just self-questioning, they both outperformed the control group and the discussion group. They found that the peer questioning added no significant advantage over self-questioning alone. And they found that self-questioning as a strategy was actually maintained even without prompting. So what Alison found from doing this was that if the students are effectively trained in asking questions, and they then ask themselves questions as they go through the lecture, that helps them both to immediately process information, retain it in the short-term memory, and it helps that retention, that transfer from short-term to long-term memory, so that 10 days later they were still outperforming. What I found really interesting about that, though, was how the peer questioning added no significant advantage. Because how often do we say to children, now talk to your neighbour about what I've just told you? Now talk in a group about what you've just learnt. And we tend to do that over getting them to ask themselves questions. Very rarely do we say to them, okay, now ask yourself some questions about what I've just told you. Now test yourself on the stuff that you've just heard. So we tend to focus on the wrong thing. We focus on peer and discussion questioning, peer and group questioning, I suppose, rather than self-questioning. And it is self-questioning that has been proven, by this study at least, to be more effective.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Parentkind are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By fostering strong school-parent partnerships, we can boost student attendance, improve behaviour and enhance academic performance. When parents actively participate, students thrive. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents.
Are your teachers juggling multiple technology platforms and struggling to keep everything organised? Then Toddle might be the answer. Built by a team of ex-educators, Toddle offers an all-in-one solution for teachers that streamlines everything, from curriculum planning and assessments to communication and report cards. And the best part? Toddle comes inbuilt with an AI assistant that helps teachers save time and improve their practices. 85% of schools replaced 3 or more platforms when they brought in Toddle. Teachers using Toddle say that the platform helps them save up to 10 hours a week. That means more time for what really matters, supporting students and driving academic success. See how Toddle can support your school. Visit toddleapp.com.
Hey education changemakers, ready for something special? It's Pet Show's 40th anniversary and we're throwing a free celebration just for you. Join us at London Excel from January 22nd to 24th to connect, learn and be inspired. Picture this, 300 plus speakers who truly get it, 600 cutting-edge edtech companies and all the fresh ideas you need to make 2025 your best year yet. So why wait? Head to uk.betshow.com, grab your free ticket and come celebrate with your peers. Because this is for you. See you at Bet.
So why does it work, though? Why is self-questioning such a good strategy for improving lecture comprehension? The first is actually the resolution to the issue that I have. It focuses the attention. And I think there are 2 reasons for that. The obvious one is that if children are asking questions and they realize that they don't know something, then they are more likely to pay attention so that they can find out the answer to the thing that they don't know, so that they can kind of square that circle or whatever the phrase is, and really get to grips with the content at hand. You know, because if they don't know something, but they don't realize they don't know it until they start doing the worksheet, they're going to kind of be very frustrated. They're going to not want to engage with the material. Whereas if they are sitting there thinking, okay, I don't actually understand something that was said a minute ago, so I'm going to listen out just in case he revisits it in a minute, then that's going to keep them focused. I also think there's a I want to say a side quest, but that's not what I mean. A tangential, that's what I mean. Oh, you can tell it's December. There's a tangential reason that it helps to focus attention, I think. And I'm sure that this will resonate with those of you that have taught younger learners. How many times has a student put their hand up to ask a question when you are mid-flow? And you've taken the question and it's had nothing to do with what you've been talking about, so you kind of move on really quickly. Then they put their hand up to ask another question and you don't answer it because you think that it's going to be unrelated to what you're talking about. But then they just kind of sit there wriggling in their chair or not really paying attention because they were so desperate to ask their question that they can't focus on anything else. So they're not actually taking in what you were saying. Because that happens to me. That happened to me last week. And it turned out that the question that I was avoiding was, in fact, completely unrelated to what I was talking about. So I'm glad that I didn't take it. But if you have got strategies for the children to write down questions that they have or things that they want to say, then they are more likely to pay attention. I do this a lot with students who like to call out the answer and who tend not to focus until they've been called on. And all I do is I give them either a whiteboard or a little block of Post-its. And I say, if you know the answer to the question that I'm asking, please write it down. Because that way, even if you don't call on them, they feel like they are being heard. They feel like their knowledge is being respected. They feel like they can show that they know the answer in a way that goes beyond just putting their hand up. And doing that keeps them focused. It keeps them on task because they are less worried about getting the attention because they know that they'll get it when they give me their whiteboard or when they give me the Post-its back. And they can then stay focused. So I think self-questioning, getting children to write down questions that they have and then seeing if they can answer them later, getting them to write down questions to themselves is a good way of getting those children that kind of want the attention all of the time to also remain focused. It helps to facilitate organization. We know that children are not always great at being organized. And so having them ask themselves questions helps with that process because it helps them to get their knowledge in order. It helps them to understand the steps of sequential thinking. It helps them to really get to grips with what they need to know in the order that they need to know it so that they can build on their prior knowledge. And it helps with that integration of prior knowledge because they are able to ask themselves a question and then suddenly go, oh, actually, I know this from last week. And that's how it relates to this week's concept. It was found, Alison did find it unusual that the cooperative learning didn't enhance comprehension, particularly for the high achieving students, because of course that is a go-to strategy. Talk to your partner, talk on your table. And again, particularly with the high achieving students, because we want them to create that knowledge. I would be interested to know why the cooperative learning didn't enhance the comprehension, particularly as a social constructivist, where, I was trained that knowledge is made by talking to each other. So I would be really interested to know why that didn't work, whether it was inadequate training on the part of the children. Maybe they didn't learn how to have cooperative discussions in a way that benefits them. Maybe it's just that discussion isn't actually as strong as self-questioning as a metacognitive technique. And so because they had been given the stronger technique anyway, the lesser technique didn't actually help. Or maybe it's because the stuff that was being taught, whatever was happening in these lectures, wasn't meaty enough to need that discussion. Maybe it was just enough that the self-questioning could keep the children focused and so could keep them on track with the lecture. It helped them to retain it. If it is just a concentration issue, then anything that helps to keep them focused is going to be the thing that that combats it. Now, we know that there's a concentration issue. This is something that I've noticed over the last few months that is becoming a bit of a bugbear of mine. Children have started to notice that they have a concentration issue, and their stock response is, oh yeah, it's because of TikTok. Other social media platforms are available. That's just me quoting what the children have said. But they use their social media as an excuse, as a blame. Oh yeah, everybody knows my generation has got poor concentration because of the social media that we use. And they are then really shocked when I turn around and say to them, yeah, but your attention span can be changed. You can train your attention span if you want to. They seem to be happy that their attention span can be lowered, but it's a legitimate surprise to them to think that it can be extended. And so if self-questioning is a way that we can help to train them to extend their attention span, then that is something that we ought to be doing. Just as a so as you know, and this is something where I'm pulling out from my initial teacher training. So, obviously in the last 20 years, more research may have been done in this. But when I was at uni, when I did my B.Ed, we were taught that a person's attention span, or a child's attention span, should be 1 minute per year of their chronological age. So our 15-year-olds should be able to focus on a task for 15 minutes. Our 5-year-olds should be able to focus on a task for 5 minutes. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of wiggle room there. That's a little bit of leeway. But that was always the rule of thumb that I used when planning my activities. And it tended to work quite well. And what I found, though, particularly over the past couple of years, where I've told that to pupils, particularly like my year 10, my year 11 pupils, the 14, 15-year-olds, they are dumbfounded by the fact that I am expecting them to focus for 14 or 15 minutes. And they're quite confused by the fact that, all of the psychology, all of the metacognitive science says that that's what they should be able to do. And that's when we get the, oh yeah, but social media. And that's when there's the discussion of, oh yeah, but you can train it to be longer if you want to. And I think, those are conversations that are worth having with our young people, because it's rubbish having a poor attention span. It really is. I was having a conversation with somebody in the staff room. I felt awful. I was having a conversation with somebody in the staff room on Thursday. And mid-sentence to this person, somebody else came up and asked a question, and I answered it while I was having a conversation with someone else. And it was so rude of me, and I had to apologize. And luckily, the person that I was talking to is a very good friend of mine, so she didn't mind. But I felt awful about it because my attention was stolen by this other person. It had nothing to do with me. I'm not to blame. It's all social media. But for me, that was a bit of a wake-up call. And it's the reason why I chose to do this show today instead of after Christmas. Because I know that I've got some work to do on my own attention span. And I think, I'm going to share that with my pupils. I'm going to explain to them, particularly the ones that like to trot out social media as an excuse. I'm going to say to them, I've noticed that I've been struggling too, and I don't even use the social media that you use. It's just something about, I don't know, getting older, or maybe the pace of life, or I don't know what it is, but there is something. So I'm working on it as part of my self-improvement. You can do that too. So what are the educational implications? We always like to know how we put these things into practice. What has Alison King's research taught us that we can take straight into the classroom. Although probably, let's be honest, not next week, because we are lucky if at this time of year our pupils can concentrate long enough to get from their drawers to their seats, or from their locker into the classroom, let alone any longer than that. So what can we do after Christmas in order to make use of these strategies? The first thing that is good for us to do is to train students in self-questioning. Now, I, for a long time, have been an advocate of a learning journal system. I kind of want to do away with traditional textbooks, and I'm moving that way in my own practice, in my own department. I want to move away from traditional textbooks and definitely move away from traditional exercise books and integrate them more into a learning journal system, whereby, as well as doing all of the activities, as well as doing all of the exercises, as well as having all of the information, there is space in the book for the student to engage in metacognition. And so, if you are going to deliver a lecture style lesson, there would be nothing wrong with you saying to your pupils, right, open up your books, title the next page self-questioning, and as you are listening to me, write down any questions that you have and write down the answers to them. Or write down questions about the material that I'm discussing, that you would like to come up on a test, and write down the answer to it. And kind of, you can just do it within the exercise book system that you already have. I think that I'm going to do a little bit of experimentation, not with my pupils, but probably with myself, for my doctoral work next year, and kind of try out a learning journal system for myself and see if it works, and see if I'm confident enough then to take it into my practice, maybe in September or maybe January 2026. Just to think about how that works. But if you don't want to go the whole hog and kind of build the metacognition into your workbook system, then just a couple of pages in their exercise book where they write down the questions would be fine. Because I've done it. I've observed teachers who have said, right, this is a lecture style lesson, so please put your books away. And they did that with the intention that the children wouldn't doodle or anything that they thought would be detracting from the attention of the lecture. But actually, this research that we've discussed today has shown that in order to concentrate, they need that written process. They need to be writing things down. We should be encouraging our students to use question stems in order to pose these questions to themselves. And I think this is something that could be done on a departmental level and could then ultimately be done at a whole school level. If your school is excited by consistency and excited by children doing the same thing in every lesson, because it does lower that cognitive load, then coming up with question stems across the school for your school's self-questioning strategy would be incredibly useful. Within our students, or in fact what our students need to do, is actively engage with this as a metacognitive strategy, because again, it's not going to help if they're not on board. And a bit like I talked about last week in the learning versus performance, there is only so much as a teacher that you can do to get them on board. Let's be honest, it does ultimately come down to them, to whether they want to be, to whether they are actually interested enough in what is going on, in being educated to engage. And we also need to encourage them to take control over their learning. But maybe getting them to pose these questions to themselves is going to be what gives them that feeling of control. is going to be what makes them feel like they are getting something out of their learning, because there is going to be physical evidence in front of them that you can't refute that their thinking has changed. Didn't actually mean for this show to be an extension of last week, but it kind of has turned into one, hasn't it? Because learning is about changes in thinking. And actually, if your children are able to pose questions and answer them, all within that same lecture, that evidences that change of thinking. So when Ofsted comes in and you are desperate to show them evidence of metacognition in your lessons, you can pull out your workbooks. You can pull out your learning journals, whatever you're phrasing them, whatever you're calling them at the moment. There were some limitations to this study. There are always limitations to this study. First of all, it did focus on high achieving students. They were honours students. They're the ones who should, in theory, have a vested interest in performing well, because they have got very high expectations of themselves, because they've been getting that positive feedback. They're the ones who want to go off to Harvard, to Yale, to all the top universities. The analysis of peer interaction was limited. The focus was on the results as opposed to what was actually happening during the peer questioning. So it may have been that the peer questioning just wasn't strong enough, and that with improved peer questioning skills, the students would have been better in that regard. So there could be more research done in that direction. But generally, I found this to be a really convincing piece of research that self-questioning enhances lecture comprehension, it enhances audio comprehension, that strategies for self-questioning are effective and they are durable, even without external prompting, and that they can be very easily integrated into classroom learning. So I'm going to practice this on myself over the next couple of weeks, because of course studying never ends. So even during the Christmas break, I will be watching YouTube videos and all sorts of things on the stuff that I'm studying for my thesis, and I'm going to practice self-questioning as I listen to these videos, just to see whether, for me, as somebody who, I've been very open today about my struggles with just audio information, does it help? Do I actually think that it helps? And I will report back just as soon as I've done it enough to say that it's good. Good practice.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Parentkind are a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By fostering strong school-parent partnerships, we can boost student attendance, improve behaviour and enhance academic performance. When parents actively participate, students thrive. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents.
Are your teachers juggling multiple technology platforms and struggling to keep everything organised? Then Toddle might be the answer. Built by a team of ex-educators, Toddle offers an all-in-one solution for teachers that streamlines everything, from curriculum planning and assessments to communication and report cards. And the best part? Toddle comes inbuilt with an AI assistant that helps teachers save time and improve their practices. 85% of schools replaced 3 or more platforms when they brought in Toddle. Teachers using Toddle say that the platform helps them save up to 10 hours a week. That means more time for what really matters, supporting students and driving academic success. See how Toddle can support your school. Visit toddleapp.com.
Hey education changemakers, ready for something special? It's Bet Show's 40th anniversary and we're throwing a free celebration just for you. Join us at London Excel from January 22nd to 24th to connect, learn and be inspired. Picture this, 300 plus speakers who truly get it, 600 cutting edge edtech companies and all the fresh ideas you need to make 2025 your best year yet. So why wait? Head to uk.betshow.com, grab your free ticket and come celebrate with your peers. Because this is for you. See you at Bet.
All right, we have got Will coming up at 10:30, so I am going to start wrapping up the show here. This is our last breakfast together of 2024. TTR will take its Christmas shutdown starting next Saturday. So I will be back with you on January he says, trying to call up his calendar, January the 4th. So the next time that we have breakfast together, will be 3 weeks today. So I would like to just take a moment to thank you all for being with me pretty much every Saturday morning in 2024. You know that I love being here. I make no secret of the fact that I love being here, that I am grateful for having this platform, that I am grateful to Tom for kind of taking a chance on letting me be here, that I am grateful to the whole TTI team for being such a supportive community. But most of all, I am grateful for all of you, because without you, there would be no point me being here. You know, if I were just going to sit here and talk to thin air, then I may as well go into school. So I'm grateful that you take the time to sit and listen to my ramblings, to listen to my tangents every single Saturday morning over breakfast. I love doing this show because it forces me to stay engaged. I like pedagogy, I like research, I like education, but it can be really difficult sometimes, you know, when you're tired or if you've had a bad lesson, to kind of stay engaged and to keep that momentum. So I'm really grateful that I have almost a deadline every single week by which I need to have read something or researched something or, you know, found something that I think is quite interesting to talk about, because it does keep me engaged with what's going on in teaching. And I think it makes me a better teacher, because it does always give me the excuse and the reason to stay engaged with what's going on. It also gives me an opportunity to be very honest. You know that I'm very honest with you guys, kind of about the struggles that I personally have in teaching, about the struggles that I see other people have in teaching, because I don't believe in keeping up that bravado. I don't believe in being the teacher that goes, oh, they always behave for me, because I don't think that helps anybody. Which is not to say that I believe in being like toxically negative and saying I'm awful at everything. I believe in balance. You know, the ancient Greeks used to say everything in moderation, everything needs to balance. And I'm a big believer in that. So thank you as well for helping me to keep balanced. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas if you celebrate. I wish you all a very Happy New Year. If you are not celebrating anything over the next couple of weeks, if your holidays are not happening, if you are just not feeling in the holiday mood, which is absolutely valid, I hope that you have a very restful, very peaceful rest of December, beginning of the winter tide. And I've got some really fun stuff planned for the show in 2025, and I cannot wait to be back with you and get back down to that. So for the last time in 2024 and until the new year, thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.